Hello and welcome to the third episode in this very special Spoilers for Days Bake Off mini-series. If this is your first time listening to us, go ahead and watch and listen to part 1, where we start off with Aussie Bake Off and then we move into OG Bake Off and now Canadian Bake Off. I am Josh, and with me I have got Brandon.
Hello again.
Yes, we're back.
On this really hot Australian afternoon.
Oh, it's classic Australia.
Classic Australia Christmas. We don't get a white Christmas, we get a bloody fucking hot one.
Yes. Unfortunately, it is a real shame that we don't get a white Christmas. But anyway, our main focus today is going to be the Great Canadian Baking Show Season 3. So, as always, I'll start with you, Brandon. What did you enjoy the most about this season?
Oh, I loved this season. Out of all the 3 seasons this year, this one has been overall my favourite. Mm-hmm. On my sliding scale 1 to 10, as I always do in these episodes, I'm giving this season of Canadian Bake Off a 9 out of 10.
Ooh.
9 out of 10. What I really loved about it the most is, and I think a lot of viewers and listeners can agree, was the caliber of baking this year was just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely amazing. The only I would have given it a 10 out of 10. The reason I deducted 1 mark was because I did like this season's bakers, but I don't feel like I got as attached to them as I did in the British season, like with Rosie and Henry and Michael and all that, but still a really good bunch. Mm-hmm. And I think they're really wholesome people, but I don't think that was shown on the screen as much, and I like to see that just as much as the baking, but that's not their fault. That's all down to the editing, but still a very well-deserved 9 out of 10. Like when I was going through selecting the bakes and that for when we examine all the technical signatures and that, like I've gone probably about 2 pages worth of notes. Not going to be able to go through them all, but that's just how good. That's how good they were. There was just too many.
That's fair. Ones. And I think the biggest thing is because we're leading off from last season where we had bakers like Andre and Megan pull off these amazingly beautiful bakes. So the standard is now super high. So it makes complete sense that Canadian would continue to provide bakers, who can do these really, really intricate bakes and have all these techniques behind them. So,
and I like how they kind of show off their sort of Canadian way of doing things. Because I think a lot of people, especially because British Bake Off, it's been on for a really long time. So I think we've gotten quite familiar with how they do things. And living in Australia, we know how we do things, but we don't really know a lot about Canada. So it's really nice to see their sort of take on things, and I think they've done it extremely well.
Yeah.
Really creative people they are.
Definitely. And I think, also the other important thing is we had a very big change in cast for hosts. So we, Dan Levy and Julia Chan are no longer hosts. They left at the end of season 2, as did Rochelle Adonis, who was one of the judges. So we now got Carolyn Taylor and Aurora Brown from Baroness von Sketch Show as the new hosts. They are amazing. I love their compliments.
I liked all the new cast additions. I loved Aurora and Carolyn.
Yes, and Kyla as well.
And Kyla's really good too.
I think the thing was with Rochelle is that she brings that Australian energy of it's a little bit for me, and it's just a touch slightly aggressive. It can't the tone wise, it can come off slightly more harsh than it might have intended.
Yeah, as with the unmentioned Channel 9 season of Australian Bake Off back all those years ago, one of the judges was Australian Kerry Vincent. Like, she was entertaining in her own way, but she actually at times was quite nasty. Like, she was not nasty, but very blunt and direct, and I just don't think that sort of fits in with the whole sort of family, wholesome vibe.
The ethos of the show is not.
Yeah, the ethos of the show. She'd probably do really well on, like, a professional sort of show, like MasterChef or, Bake Off Professionals or something like that, maybe.
Maybe. The thing is, right, she now is on Food Network.
I'm not sure. I haven't followed her. I only know of her because of that.
Fair enough.
But yeah, no, I just don't think she fits the whole ethos of the home baker sort of thing show.
Yeah. And, as they said in the intro, Bruno is not old. Bruno is classic. Classic Bruno. We all love Bruno.
I love Bruno.
In my opinion, like, out of the 3 male judges from the 3 shows, Bruno, to me, is the best.
Yeah. Because one of the things that I wrote down that I really loved about this season was, like, and I think the other judges do it too, but I think Kyla and Bruno probably, especially this season, I think did it a bit better than British and Australian. They're really good, and again, this probably comes down to what the editors and the producers wanted to focus on, but they were really good, like, not only telling people, like, when they did something wrong, but they were really good at telling them how to make it better.
Yes.
And, I mean, that's not to say that Paul and Prue and Matt and Maggie didn't do that, but we just didn't get to see it.
Yeah. And if we didn't get to see it, maybe it wasn't as often as we would have hoped, I think.
But literally every single sort of challenge, they were giving tips and advice.
God bless constructive criticism.
Yeah. And they delivered it in a way that was not harsh. It was just, this was done really well, this not so well, this is how you can do to make it better.
Yes. This is why Canadian is, like, way up there in terms of favorites.
Really?
Okay, I guess we'll move on to the bakers, because this year, well, as always, Canadian is special. Canadian only takes in 10 bakers. Compared
and they only
to,
go over 8 episodes instead of 10.
Yes, it's nice and succinct. We're over in 2 months, and that's kind of good.
I feel like you get just enough.
Yes.
There is some time. I mean, people are probably going to be shocked when I say this, but at times, especially I feel like this year, because all 3 seasons were sort of running at the same time, there is sometimes a little bit too much Bake Off, and there's just sometimes when there's sort of extra running time, that you just sort of, they add in stuff that just doesn't need to be in there, whereas I think the Canadian, it was really good at focusing on what makes the show good.
Yeah, and I think it came down to I think it mostly comes down to the fact about ads. If I recall correctly, these episodes are about, like, the full filming time is about 45 minutes. So there's like 15 minutes worth of ads that are pre-roll stuff that happens on their network compared to well, the thing with Aussie Bake Off is that because it's not on, like, a national broadcaster, or it's not on free to air, they have the luxury of being able to go beyond, and give us extra. But I think, as we said in Aussie, like, too much of a good thing can ruin or like can make it less good.
Because especially I felt like Aussie episodes this year were longer than what they have been in the past. Like, some episodes I think they felt like in the past it used to be maybe like an hour at the most, but some episodes, I think especially the pilot, the first episode and the finale, I think they went closer towards like an hour and a half, and I don't think it really needs to. It doesn't really add any. And if anything, I think it takes away from the quality of the show. If you get my drift, because you're seeing stuff that you don't, and you sort of lose focus on what is really important.
Yeah, that's fair. And like, it happens. It's like if people will know, the audience will know if the pacing is off. Because to them it won't feel like it's either moving too quickly or not quickly enough. And I definitely felt that in some of the Aussie ones. But in terms of Canadian, like I'd love there to be like just a little bit more because, it's Canadian and I'm very much here for the friendliness that happens in that tent. So we'll do a quick rundown of who the bakers are. We had Andrea, Betty, Natalia, Mary Lou, Liam, Jody, Jay, Jasmine, Colin, Chris, and I think, is that everyone? Did I say Betty already?
Yeah, you said Betty.
Okay, so we have 10. So, Brandon, favorite bakers?
So I've narrowed my favourites down to around 4 or 5. So I've got Mr. Colin, got Jasmine, Jody, and Chris.
Ooh, okay. I feel like, hang on, Jasmine, Jody, Chris, Colin. I've got Liam added here as well as my faves. Like it was, I don't know, like. Those 5 in particular, and again, like Canadian is very special. I guess for me because I've actually watched it from its very first season. Yeah. But like everyone is glorious, especially this season in particular. But these 5 are like really like wholesome people, in my opinion. So. Yeah, those.
Well, I mean, Jasmine makes the list pure. She makes the list even just because she made a trophy for each person that one-star baker.
Yes.
And her quote, probably my quote of the season, the one that sticks out in my mind is, "Lemon zest. It's like garlic, isn't it? You measure it with your heart." Loved it. I'm yet to have a dish that has too much garlic.
Ooh, that is a strongly held opinion, Brandon, for some people.
Chris and Christy, I think they would agree. There's almost no such thing as too much garlic, but that's just my opinion. I'm just yet to come across a dish that has too much. I've had plenty that did not have enough, though.
Ooh, okay.
My mum used to always make spaghetti bolognese when I was younger, and if she ever forgot to put in garlic, you could just taste it instantly if there's no garlic. And one of my friends, their family makes it without garlic, and that's just, in my opinion, inconceivable.
Oh dear me.
Spaghetti bolognese has to have garlic, in my opinion.
Fair enough. I think for me, if that sort of set, like if you measure it with your heart, for me, that would be like the condiment would probably be chili oil, like Mama Joe. And just in case Mama Joe is listening, hi Mama Joe. But yeah, for me that would be chili oil because, it's like you never can have enough. So yeah. In terms of wild,
say tomato tea.
No, please. Now, I had Jay, Betty, and Andrea as wild cards to get in beyond the halfway mark. Who did you have?
So as we saw in the final, you had Colin, Natalia, and Jody, and that was pretty much no surprise there. They were pretty much the front runners, especially I think Natalia and Jodie in particular, they were sort of like the front runners right from the very beginning, so that was no surprise there. But in terms of wild cards, as in like people that could have made the final but unfortunately just didn't get there, I had Jasmine and Chris, and they were literally only, well, in Jasmine's case, 2 episodes away and 1 episode in the case of Chris.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think for me, these 3, because I stick out a lot of their Instagrams like before the show premieres, so it was interesting. Very well. But these 3, like, given the right conditions, could have probably made it into the final. But in terms of predictions, I think I kind of felt like the top 4 I could definitely pick out by the 2nd or 3rd week. So those 4 were like quite easy to spot. So did you have any like similar predictions for who would make it?
Yeah, my predictions were Natalia, Colin, Chris, and Jodie, and they were top 4.
Yes. So these 4
simple, were really.
I mean, yeah, you know, it's very easy, and to sort of see like the strongest people like in this batch, it was easy to sort of start spotting like who is good at what.
And historically, I have actually been quite accurate at predicting who is going to win Bake Off. Like, I've like Aussie Bake Off. I've pretty much correctly predicted the winner every single season before the episode aired.
Ooh.
It's a bit harder. It's harder to do it with British and Canadian because I've already read. In some cases, I've already read spoilers before the final actually happened. Yeah, but those are the 4 that I predicted, and even if I didn't already know what the result was before the end of the season, I think that I don't think my choices would have changed.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and I think the last category we have to talk about is, and we've done this obviously throughout this sort of mini-series, is thirst. So I don't think it would surprise anyone if I said Chris and Colin were my thirst favorites. It should not surprise anyone. And if it does surprise anyone, you might need to go and relook through all of my Twitter threads for this, because it's very obvious. So
I guess for mine, I picked Mr. Colin.
Can I ask
why?
why?
I don't usually like a man bun, but it works on him. It works on him very well.
It works on him. Yes, it does.
And you know, he's part of his little group, his singing group,
Asian riffing trio, or as Chris and Christy from the Washing Up would say, polite disagreement. I mean, yeah, Colin is a singer as a hobby. I'm like, that is peak Filipino. And obviously I have to stand. With Chris, it was, Doctor Who bakes? Okay, I'm here for this. That's how we'll, and I think it becomes all the more apparent especially when we get later into the season. So I think it's good time now. We'll go into bakes. So there are so many good bakes this season.
Too many good bakes. As I said at the beginning, my list of good bakes went on for pretty much 2 pages.
I think I have a favorite from every week. Actually, I have multiple favorites from every week.
Yeah, like I've got a bake from every single week on this, whereas in the other 2 episodes, they were only it was only maybe 1 or 2 here and there, but literally every single week there was a signature and a showstopper that made a list, usually multiple.
Yes.
Obviously can't go through them all, but I'll probably, well, in my case, I'll
maybe
pull out the ones that really stuck in my head.
Fair enough.
Signatures, I really, right from the very first episode, and I think this is sort of what cemented her foot as one of the better bakers, one of the front runners in the season. I really loved Natalia's Ukrainian honey cake right from the very first signature. Those layers of biscuit, it was a biscuit cake, I'm pretty sure, and they really loved the flavors, and the presentation was top notch. As if, like, Natalia, in terms of presentation, she reminds me of Frances from season 4 of British Bake Off. She's pretty much incapable of presenting something that doesn't look amazing. What are your thoughts?
That week, I really like Natalia's Ukrainian honey cake. I also like Jodie's Four Seasons cake, just like in terms of presentation as well. And the story that she gave behind it, that was really pretty. Yeah.
That's one of the things I really loved about Jodie is there was sort of a story, like a family sort of background to every single thing that she did. And that's one of the things that sort of helps you sort of get attached to bakers and get to know them, is when they put their own little spin and personality into their bakes, rather than just doing a classic stock standard bake that you see on pretty much any other cooking show, really.
Yeah, that's fair.
Another one that really stood out to me, it was from Chocolate Week. I really loved Chris's ice cream bar.
That one was
incredible.
Mate, when Bruno said that he like Chris's Dacquoise like chocolate ice cream things reminded him of Paris, I was like, I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of Chris.
Yeah, if a Frenchman says it reminds him of Paris, you know you've done your job. You know you nailed it.
Yes.
I really loved also Natalia's Povertitsa from I think it was International Week.
Ooh, hang on, let me just double check for you. I think it was Bread Week.
Yes, it was Bread Week. I'm getting all my weeks mixed up. But yeah, just the way it cut into it, and she had these really clear spirals, and she had different colours within the Povertitsa, whereas in a lot of the other ones they cut into, it had sort of lost that definition in the centre, but her definition, like technically, I can't remember whether the flavours worked or not, because I know sometimes the flavours or the textures in her bakes didn't always work, but that she always had the technique behind the bake pretty much down pat.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to ones that she had practiced before.
Yeah, definitely.
And like another one of Natalia's that really stood out to me was from the finale, her Frasier cake. Like she did 3 different mousses, and they were all all different colours, all in perfect symmetry. And to achieve that in like 2.5 hours, and have them set and all that, and not sliding out, that is real skill.
Yes, definitely.
And then other seasons where they, like other incarnations of Bake Off where they've done it as technical, people struggle just with the one. Yeah.
And I think it's a testament to her skill level.
Yeah.
Because, and her ability to multitask that many, different elements going on at the same time. So, yeah, that was like super amazing just to see her pull it off.
A huge risk too, because you pretty much have no room for something to go wrong, and because like I think it was Jodie, she forgot to put gelatin in her mousse, but because she'd only done one, she had just enough time to redo it and have something to present. It wasn't perfect, but it got there. But if it had happened to Natalia, and because she was doing 3 mousses,
that would have,
like, especially if it was the bottom mousse, if she'd forgotten to put gelatin in that, the whole thing would have just, I mean, any of the layers, it would have just been disastrous.
Yeah. That would have definitely, like, you know, affected the way that she would have performed in finale had something
especially
gone wrong.
Because when they actually tasted it, they found that the matcha overpowered the other flavors that she had in the mousses. Like everything, like the bake on the cake was good, the matcha flavor was good, but because the matcha was so prominent, they sort of lost the flavors in the mousses, and had that not been technically perfect, it may, as you said, have affected the final result in the end.
Yeah, definitely.
What are some of your favorite signatures? I think we've heard enough about mine.
What else is there? What else have you not mentioned? In Chocolate Week, I had Colin's pomegranate. What were they? Pomegranate hearts. Those ones are really good in my opinion. In Old School Week, Liam's pear cake, actually, it looked really nice. The coffee cake thing.
Yes.
Where he like literally just put the pear in, prayed to whichever deity he wished to, and it came out, and it actually was cooked like really well. So that one was a surprise. But I think my biggest sort of thing was in International Week, where they had to do the Tres Leches signature. I put down Chris's Yin and Yang Tres Leches. Execution-wise, it's brilliant, and I love the use of like the 2 different teas. But Colin's ube flavored Tres Leches cake is just like praise Filler Daddy, because you know, like, and as he said in the beginning of International Week, that episode, he said that he only pulled out the Filipino card, like he hadn't pulled it out until today because he knew that he would be able to flex on like all the filler stuff. So seeing ube. For people like who may not know what ube is a type of purple yam. It's similar but slightly different to taro, and like the texture wise, if you use the dehydrated ube, it can be a bitch to make sure that it's like all smooth and everything. But Colin pulled it off, and was like, hallelujah, praise Jesus.
Yeah, I only heard of ube for the first time this year. One of my colleagues who runs sort of like a cake making dessert sort of business on the side outside of the accounting world. And earlier in the year, she did it was just a one-off dessert for this event she was at, and she made an ube cheesecake. So it was this really lovely-looking purple cheesecake that was all gluten-free, really well decorated. And I asked her, what the heck is ube? And yeah, she basically said it was sort of like a purple yam, sort of like a purple potato.
Yeah. And it doesn't really have a flavor, so that's why it's able to hold like the sugars and everything that you decide to put in it. But it can have that really sort of earth flavor depending on like when you pick it and if you're gonna use it fresh. And props to Colin for doing that for me. What else is there? I had in Pie Week Jodie's bear, the bear pie that she did, that was amazing. But also Natalia's woman in the mirror pie.
Like she captured her, like it looked just like her. Like that's another thing she's really good at, is that she can recreate just detail, just for like whether it be faces, monuments, all that kind of stuff, and that's a skill.
Yes, it is. Just like the way that she was using all the tools to create basically like just like a cartoon version of what she looks like in the mirror.
I'd say I didn't mind. Yeah. I didn't mind Colin's Medusa head pie either. Like, I do agree with the judges that he probably could have put more detail into the face, but the snakes, they were really awesome.
Yes, definitely. I think we better move on to text, because if we spend too much on it...
We could probably spend 2 hours just analysing all the bakes that were really good, because we didn't even go through half of the ones I had, but unfortunately, not enough time.
Yeah, we don't have time. And moving to technicals, my blanket statement here is that every technical that they chose this season was actually really great. And, we say this especially for Canadian, is that they really do not give them a lot of help.
Nope.
So you actually have to know your shit when it comes to skills or adapt what you already know to whatever recipe there is. So, like, that is my blanket statement is like, every technical is just like the choices were amazing. Did you have some that were standouts in terms of like?
So as you said, like every single technical that they did, like technicals, I'm probably already said this, but out of the 3 challenges, the technicals tend to be the most forgettable sort of ones, and I think it can be really hard to pick ones that are both technically challenging but also exciting to watch people actually make. And I think every single technical that they chose was the perfect choice for that sort of week. All of them were really hard, challenging to make and also really enjoyable to watch. But probably the 2 that really stood out to me, so was the Kranzekake from International Week.
Yes.
That one was incredible. And then the Marquise au Chocolat from Chocolate Week.
Ooh, okay. The Marquise du Chocolat, is that the...
That was that layered, it had like layers of like, there was sponge, there was a mousse, a ganache, and something else that I can't remember the name. It was all those different layers.
There was chocolate, and chocolate. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had to assemble it in the tin, I think in the revert, because you inverted the tin.
Oh, so that's right. This was the inverted dessert.
So whatever was on the top, you had to do that element first, and then it was a mousse on the top. I think there was a ganache that went on top of that. There was some sort of pistachio thing in the middle, then I think there was a sponge and perhaps maybe one other element, and you had to sort of, get each layer to set before you put the next one on and hope for the best that when you turned it out, you had all the distinct and defined layers that they wanted.
Yes. Ah, okay.
I really loved that Kranzekake. I kind of just like saying Kranzekake. But it really was a good technical challenge. Like, they had to judge, because I think they said something along the lines of that they only gave, the recipe was only enough dough to make however many rings that they had. So they had to correctly judge how big to make each ring, so that when they stacked it up, it all sort of flowed, like got progressively smaller until you got to the top.
Yeah.
And, doing all that with a really brittle biscuit,
yes.
It should have been a brittle biscuit if you made it correctly, and without it being like without it, breaking and all that kind of stuff as you're constructing it.
Yeah.
And some of them were a bit too small.
But
poor Jasmine.
Jasmine.
Just to even, a lot of people would struggle to do something like that. Just to even get it on the plate, that's major props, in my opinion.
Oh yes, definitely. Just like, I think I would agree with you. The Marquise au Chocolat and the Kranzekake, were one of two of my favorite technicals in terms of like how technically challenging.
Yeah.
doing the creme caramel in 55 minutes. that was a challenge in and of itself. But like with that one, just I think for me what stood out was everyone's reaction to it, and how I think Colin, there were very few people that had standing, like non-spilt creme caramels.
Yeah.
So
I felt so sorry for. There was someone's. I think it was at Natalia's. It was basically just soup, but someone's was like it literally turned out.
I think it was Liam's.
Because there was one person they left some of theirs in. Yeah, no, I think it was Natalia who was thinking of.
Who left one?
She left some of them in the ramekins because the one she did turn out it was literally just still liquid. It hadn't set at all.
Yeah.
And it's funny on face value, like just out of all the technicals that they did, that was probably the most simplistic looking one. But as we found on many incarnations of Bake Off, some of the most simplest ones, especially because they only had such a really short amount of time to make it. It was very difficult to get it set and, looking good and tasting good all in. I think they had 75 minutes?
No, they had it in 55.
Okay.
So it was less than an hour. So to do that, I think in less than an hour, is amazing. So yeah, there's that. I also had, I think for the last 2 weeks, I had the Pithiviers and the Marjolaine, because they looked beautiful. And to pull those off in like the time restrictions that they had, again, massive props to all of the finalists for getting them done. I just have one quick thing to say about the Kranzakakia. I was chatting with one of the season 3 bakers, about like, what would you do with those, if you didn't want to do the almond meal, biscuit. And I was like, maybe, you could do like a choux pastry version of a Kranzakakia. Because it would work. It would still be structurally sound. So
if you make a croquembouche out of choux pastry, like
you can do
rolls, you can
do a Kranzakakia out of it. Yeah. So
it's made where like the only difference is the traditional Kranzakakia. It's like a biscuit type thing, whereas choux pastry I imagine would work quite well.
Yeah. So there's all of our wonderful technicals. And now I think we're back to the long list. So showstoppers, Brandon.
One that really, like, there were so many good ones that stood out in my mind, but one of the ones that really stands out was from Bread Week, Colin's crab bread sculpture.
The challah. Oh my lord.
That one was absolute, like, the fact that he went to the trouble to even make the scales and like the spiky things on the top of the crab shells, like that attention to detail and in bread, and having it proved correctly, baked correctly, and looking the way that it did. My God.
Oh, bless. Yes. Do you have any other showstoppers?
Oh, I've got too many showstoppers.
Okay, maybe what we can do is go week by week instead. That way we can talk about both of our choices for showstoppers, and it won't seem like we're picking people out for it.
I really love, and then going like so Cake Week, I had Natalia's Ukraine and Alberta cake. Out of all the provincial cakes that they did, that one was the one that stood out the most to me, and that's what helped win a Star Baker. I thought she was very deserving with that one.
Yeah,
and I love that they did. That was a really, really good challenge just in general, because a province, it sounds so much more cultural than just a state or a territory. Imagine like trying to do that in Australian Bake Off, because as Chris and Christy said in their podcast, trying to do like our Australian state flags are really not that interesting.
They're boring.
Not that exciting.
They're boring unless you are from the Northern Territory or from WA. Everything else is like a blue field with the Union Jack in the upper left canton and like the state symbol. But yeah.
Sorry?
I was going to say like Natalia's Albertan cake, but also Chris's Albertan cake, like to me was really good. And the use of like the canola, was it canola oil?
Yeah, it could have been. Like, there was someone used cold pressed oil?
That's it.
Yeah, and they said that it gave like a really kind of good nuttiness to the flavour, and I remember the judges really liked that.
Yeah.
And like a really credit to just how talented Natalia was with presentation. Like nearly every single showstopper that she did made it onto my list. So going to Biscuit Week, so yes. I had Natalia's Space Fantasy biscuit scene. That one was really good. I also liked Jodie's. She did a dragon.
Yes.
And then I also loved Colin's Mer People one. That one was really, really good. And it was kind of funny that I thought it was so funny that he did that, considering that Andrea's hairstyle, she was basically looked like a mermaid that had come out of the ocean.
And like
her hair color was, I think she wins the award for best hair. Well, certainly the most memorable hair color.
Fair enough. I would have to agree with your 3 showstoppers, and like Colin's comments throughout that bake were like too sexy. So I feel like he was just channeling Jason Momoa as Aquaman for his Mer People. Okay. Bread Week, you had Colin's Challah. Is there anyone else's?
Yeah, I also loved Natalia's, her Ukrainian girl cake. Like, again, she's got a talent for faces and just detail and just making things just look. And she makes it look effortless and easy when it really is not.
Have to agree with you there. I think moving on, we've got Old School Week next. I really liked Jasmine's toast to the class, like the class of 2020 cake that she had.
Oh, yes.
Purely simply based off the fact that she had alcohol in it. Almost a whole bottle's worth of alcohol.
Oh, yeah, you could really taste the rum.
And I also liked Natalia's, like, spinach. The use of spinach in a cake. Much like this season of Aussie, where we had someone do like frosting with mayonnaise or something.
Oh yeah, Laura.
Laura's like, was it avocado? No.
Yeah, she definitely. I think she had mayonnaise, and she might have had avocado in the cake, or vice versa.
Yeah, so like using spinach as an ingredient in a cake is a brave choice, but I do have to applaud her for using it. Because
I had her spinach cake on my list too. Pretty much, it was very green, and just the fact that she was brave enough to put something like spinach, which you would traditionally associate with like having it on like a sandwich or in a salad or something like that, but putting it in a sweet thing like a cake.
Yeah.
Making it taste nice and not like a salad. I also really liked Jodie's anniversary slab cake. Like, this is again a perfect example of her bringing her family and just putting her into her bakes.
Definitely. Okay, so Chocolate Week. What showstoppers did you enjoy the most?
Ooh, I really liked, obviously, Chris's nod to Singapore chocolate chocolate box. That, you know, he won Star Baker with that week, and yeah, did really well with that one. And I do agree that some of the design did look a little bit rushed, as the judges said, but it still was really striking to me. I also really liked Colin's spooky themed chocolate box. That anatomical heart that he did was just it was too accurate. It was good. And then I also loved Jodie's what did she do? Her Hawaiian Dreams one. That was really good.
I will say I did like Colin's one. I also had Jasmine's Honeybee chocolate box in there.
Oh, yeah.
Just because the use of popping candy? I think it
might
was.
Have been.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
From what I remember, the judges really liked that effect of like the bee sting, like, and I think this is where like my absolute adoration for Chris like went through the roof, because it's Singapore, and using all those like traditional Singaporean dessert flavors in a showstopper is just like, give me everything. I will take everything that you have, even though it doesn't look perfect. It's great. And the flavors were amazing. And, you know, he won Star Baker that week. So there we go. After that is International Week, where they did like
cheesecake.
Cheesecakes of the
gotta
world.
love cheesecake. It's one of my favorite desserts. So the two that really stood out to me that week were Natalia's Zapacanca cheesecake, and then Jodie's Tropical Celebration Cassata cheesecake, which obviously won a Star Baker that week.
Yes. The Zapacanca. That was like, they're all of them in that week were like really good, like, but obviously it was a real shame that Jasmine forgot to turn down her oven, to, you know, make sure that her cake wasn't burnt, and which was a shame. Like, it would have been a really good one too. For my favorites that week, I had, again, Colin doing like cassava and a cheddar cheesecake. For many people that might sound a bit weird. Cassava is also like a root. It's kind of, we're in the same family as like tapioca. So it's starchy, and a lot of people may not be familiar with it unless you're, you know, Asian or South American. But those flavors really do go well together. I also have
and I love that he put cheddar in the cheesecake. It's not a cheese that you would normally associate with a cheesecake. You'd normally associate something like ricotta, Philly cream cheese. Some use mascarpone. I think I've seen some that use mascarpone, but never seen, like, a cheddar's normally associated as being a very savory cheese, like you'd have it on like sandwiches or with wine and cheese and stuff like that. Not in a cheesecake, but the fact that he pulled it off and they liked I'm pretty sure they liked the flavor. Yeah, they did.
They did. There is Chris's strawberry mojito souffle cheesecake, though, is like, for me, because I have thoughts about cheesecake, and I really like the Japanese souffle cheesecake. So having seen that come up again on the show is also something that you don't see often. So for me, that was my favorite. It is a shame that he didn't have enough time to decorate, because I think had he been able to pull that off, it probably would have been like a very good contender for him. But alas, things happen. So what can you do?
Did it have something to do with the fact? The fact that it was also your favorite? Did it have something to do with the fact it was mojito flavored?
Oh, not necessarily. I mean, like, for me, I don't drink that much, so I think the appeal came more from the fact that he was trying to do a souffle cheesecake rather than solely of alcohol. So a little bit of both, I think. And then we have Pie Week. What was your favorites from this week? Because this is like Pie Tower, so they were in the same. This is basically a very similar idea to what British Bake Off did this season in terms of like stacked towers of pie.
Probably. Let me think. It probably, for me, it wasn't out of all the showstopper challenges, probably it wasn't my favorite showstopper, but I got to go with, obviously, with Natalia's Euro dinner pie tower. She won Star Baker after all, and as I said, she's pretty much incapable of making anything look bad.
That's true.
Yeah, and Jodie did really good with her brunch at Pie Tower as well.
Yeah.
They all did really well. It was a real shame that Chris's his time management was really off, and it was a shame that like there was one he'd put leaves around it and they'd burnt.
Yes.
Yeah. And it looked like that he tried to chisel away at it to get rid of some of the burnt stuff, and I think it probably ended up making it look worse, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that... Chris. It would be so close, but, there can only be 3 people that make it to finale, so... And yeah, I have to agree, like, with the 2 that you picked out for this challenge. Like, Natalia's Euro dinner was definitely, like, a standout. And Jodie's, like, brunch up at Pie Tower as well. I will say, as we get into finale week, Bruno mentioned something I think is really important for audiences to remember and keep in mind, is that I think I have to pull up my Twitter for this because, because I think the fan reaction to British Bake Off this year, with David winning, having not won a single star baker at all, was, I think people on social media were just like a little bit salty that happened. But like Bruno said something that really struck out to me. And it's like, it's really good to sort of, let me see where this is. Oh, really? Did I not do that? Why is my, Twitter.
Sorry, I can't help you with that. I can't.
I know. Hang on. It's something about like, no, it doesn't matter. Like past experience doesn't. I remember because we did talk about this on British Bake Off. On the British episode. Fun times when we can't remember what you even said. But it's basically along the lines of like, the past experience does not weigh any at all. Like it cannot affect what decisions happen today. If someone has a bad day, unfortunately, that's how, things happen, and you have to acknowledge that, like they just didn't perform as well as they wanted to. So like that's something that's really important. And, but yeah, in terms of finale, Natalia's Motherland Piemonte is just glorious. Like,
yeah. Just as I always said, the detail, and I was impressed by this too. Just the detail she'd etched into the biscuit. I think it was like a shield or something, biscuit, and she etched this really intricate pattern into it. And just the way that she'd covered, like the head of the statue to actually make it look like it was metallic. And it was just amazing. And even though she lost one of her panels, I do have to applaud Jodie on her Eiffel Tower one.
Just in like, sheer scale.
Just the sheer size of it, and it was still standing.
Yes, that is massive props. Oh, I finally found Bruno's tweet. Bruno's quote. It's every week. It's a clean slate, so anybody can take it home. So, that's something that you need to keep in mind, is like, doesn't matter what happened in, the previous, 7 or 9 weeks, depending on which show, format you're watching. it's what happens on the day that really determines who wins. But Natalia, really did, like I say, like each one of those people that made it to finale really deserved to be there.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And it doesn't matter that Natalia had won it 3 times and the other two had only, I think they only won it once each, Jodie and Colin. If they did better than her on the day, the trophy should have gone to them. But in this case, Natalia, she won Star Baker 3 times. She did the best on the day, so that's where the trophy had to go. And I'm completely happy with that.
Yes, as am I. Like, and again, it's the thing with Canadian is that they are, you can definitely see the friendship that they had grown together throughout the last however many weeks they were filming for Bake Off. So any one of them could have won and I would have been just as happy.
Another thing I'll say about the Pisa Monte showstopper, just a bit of Bake Off history trivia. It actually it was also the finale showstopper in season 5 of the Great British Bake Off. And as I've talked about, before, normally obviously there's always going to be a bit of overlap, and normally when you see it the second time round, for it to impress me, it has to be better, or at least just as good. And in this case, especially with Natalia's, I think she really pushed the boat. And I didn't care that it's been done before, because they really made it their own and did it really, really well.
Yeah, that's true. So those are basically all of our thoughts. But before I ask Brandon what else we'd like to see in Canadian, I'm just going to do a very, very quick sort of tangent, because this year we also had the Great Canadian Holiday Baking Show, which is their holiday special, which they released a few weeks after finale aired. We had James and Vandana from season 1 come back, and then we had Megan and Timothy from season 2 come back, and it was just really good to see 4 of the most creative but also most lively characters from the previous 2 seasons on there. And I will say that Timothy finally getting a win is just amazing, and I'm so happy, because the boy's following in Chris's footsteps and becoming a doctor. So he was in med school. He was prepping for med school to do all of this. So yeah, there's our quick tangent into the holiday show. So,
and going off that medical school comment, I just remembered that Colin had mentioned that him and Chris actually went to the same university.
Yes, I know.
And that's right. Did he say that they were in the same program or something like that?
So this is the thing. This means Colin was on track to live up to his parents' expectations of doing medicine. So they were probably in the same pre-med program. And then Colin was like, nah, I'm not doing this. So, and did marketing, and he's good at it. So there's that. It's just funny to think 2 bakers that auditioned separately, were able to get on the same show, and they know each other from the past. So the world is small. So, Brandon, is there anything that you'd like to see happen for Canadian in future seasons?
Pretty much, for this section, it sort of just overlaps with the other 2. And I think the Canadian Bake Off, it's already doing this really well. Just draw inspiration from all different corners of the world, just giving us a variety, different challenges, different cultures, and that. So really all I can say is just keep doing what you're doing, and because they're doing it well. And I gave it a 9 out of 10 purely just on the the baking caliber. Like, I didn't have any problems with the challenges or anything like that.
And I think, I would say that's sort of the same feeling I have. Is like the fact that they actively do an international week continues to show how open they are to incorporating bakes from around the world. And the added benefit, I think, particularly for Canadian, is because French-Canadian culture sits alongside, Anglo-Canadian culture. They're able to pull in, traditional French stuff a lot easier, I think, compared to some other editions of Bake Off. I think the one thing I will say is that I would really love to see like a post-show sort of update at the end of finale.
Yeah,
I think that's really the only critique I have for Canadian, is that I love it so much, but I would like to see, what they're getting up to, if they've been catching up together. And I will say they are bubble tea fiends, that lot. I'm surprised Tartine Canada has not sponsored them. So if any bubble tea brands want to get in on like the wholesomeness that is Bake Off, like the contestants, I mean, go approach them, because apparently they do bubble tea. Like, I saw all these posts about bubble tea. Like, bloody hell, what is happening? Oh, goodness me. So are there any final thoughts, Brandon, before we wrap up?
I just had a brainwave. Another thing that I really loved about Jodie is she cooks by feel. Like Jasmine was like, Jodie's the only freaking person that tempers chocolate without a thermometer. Like, Jodie's method of testing whether it's at the right temperature is to dab a bit on your wrist, and if it stings, it's the right temperature.
I'm just like, okay.
Very unconventional, but
it works.
That's awesome that... Like, I just think it's awesome that people that don't need a thermometer to do sort of stuff. Like, I actually own a baking book by Po Ling Yao from Australian. Yes. And her method, she doesn't actually use a thermometer when she's making Italian meringue, like the sugar syrup. She just waits to see. She knows it's ready if there's no more steam coming off of it, but okay. I've made it once, and she does give you a temperature that I think it's around 118 to 120 degree. You're basically looking for softball stage, and so I did it with the thermometer, and I noticed when it got to the right temperature, it was exactly what she said. There was no more steam coming off of it. I reckon that's so awesome. People that have been doing it for so long, and they just know when things are ready.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I've gushed far too much about this show, especially on Twitter. So I think it's probably a good time we start wrapping up. So Brandon, thank you again for doing this with me.
Always a pleasure.
If people want to come find you, where can people find you?
So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter handle is Serious SERIOUS _black96, and it's exactly the same for Instagram.
Sweet, thank you. If you want to come find me, I am on Twitter and Instagram as Abang Pinoy. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Spoilers for Days. If you want to get in touch with us through the channel's socials, we are on Twitter and Instagram as Great Mates Podcast. And, sub to us wherever you're listening to us right now. And also please go sub to our other two shows, the main show, Great Mates Podcast, and our one-on-one Let's Get Deeper, where I've already done an episode with Brandon, talking about all the fun stuff. And with also a bunch of other...
It was a really good episode. You should go watch it.
No bias, right? There's no bias at all.
Yeah, lots, there was some recurring themes, one in particular, which I won't mention, but if you listen to it, you'll know.
Yes, you will. And I think that is that. All I have to say is thank you guys for listening to this episode, and keep in mind the next part that will drop will be a very special Bake Off Commonwealth Games. So we will, I guess we'll give you a little hint. We are going to do basically Australian, British and Canadian bake-offs, and basically form teams and, you know, talk about what we'd like to see in this hypothetical version of the Commonwealth Games. But apart from that, we will see you guys on another episode. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Where are we going? Where are we going? Where are we going?